Welcome to LinkedIn Live. I'm joined today by my friend, co-founder at Habits at Work, and our Chief Brand and Product Officer, Brian Miller. Welcome, Bri.
Hi, Andrew. I can't believe this is the first time I'm on your LinkedIn Live. How's that possible?
It's been too long, and I'm glad that you're here because we're talking today about empathic listening. I know a subject that's near and dear to both of us for different reasons. For me, because I've got so much to learn, and for you, because you've done so much research on it, and that's what I'm hoping you'll share today. So Now I'll start with a question, which is, we're a year plus into COVID, and we've been speaking about empathy endlessly, and yet people still seem to feel, especially customers, not quite gotten and understood. And in personal lives, I think that's true too. So what really is empathic listening, and how's it different from other types of listening, and what are we still missing?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Great question. Could not be more timely as a topic to talk about this. Empathic listening. Everyone conflates it with active listening a lot. That's what I see happening a lot. And a lot of people have done training, or they've read a book, or they've learned in school the skill of active listening, which is mostly about paying attention and kind of leaning forward, nodding, giving eye contact, making sure that you're there, maybe like repeating a thing or two here or there to acknowledge, asking a follow-up question. But it largely still supports waiting to respond and being prepared to jump right in and solve a problem for someone else, or just making sure that you're actually physically paying attention to them, which is great. But it doesn't leave people feeling on the other end really being heard and understood and seen, which is, as you pointed to, during the pandemic and with all of our lives in disarray, exactly what every human needs at a really foundational level right now.
And so, that seems to me to be that you're listening without an agenda or without a intention for the outcome. But if you're in sales or leadership or management, surely you always have an agenda, and that's why you're in the conversation. So how do you put that aside?
Well, I think for sales specifically, but leadership, whatever your role is, I think rethink what your agenda is first. Is your agenda to sell something? Is your agenda to problem solve as fast as possible? Or is your agenda there to build a really long-lasting relationship where the other person really feels like you are there for them, you understand them, and you hold space for them to create their own solutions and solve their own problems instead of you kind of enabling, you're empowering in a way.
We say more about this idea of holding space, because we've heard the term a lot and it's very visual, but what does it look like on the court to do that for someone?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so obviously paying attention is key, like we talked about in active listening, but being able to have in your mind awareness of self, what's going on for you in the moment, so that you can kind of turn your voice off, put it over to the side. You're not having this active running monologue or dialogue, depending on what's happening in your brain, going all of the time. You're really engaged and absorbed in what the other person is talking about. You're not waiting to respond or preparing your next question. And in fact, if you want to like visualize it, you could imagine if you're sitting maybe next to someone, not across from them in this opposition style that we often sit across from people or look across to people in Zoom or on LinkedIn Live. But imagine you're sitting next to your colleague or your family member or your customer. And out in front of you, maybe on the table, there's this bowl. And into the bowl, you ask questions and allow that other person serve up ideas for both of you to consider and look at and admire within that vessel. And then have a conversation around those concepts that are there in front of both of you. So it's not something you're trying to get from the other person or something you're trying to give or persuade to the other person, but you're actually literally creating a physical space into which ideas and thoughts and concepts can be externalized and shared and honestly kind of understood on both ends. Because one of the things that I often find happens so much when you're listening empathically for the other person is that they actually get a chance to process their own ideas in a way that they have not been given or created for themselves in the past. And that is extremely powerful. We have no time these days, it feels like, to actually do really critical thinking, have white space, be creative, strategic, or try to solve our problems in a way that isn't just forcing or trying to actively drive toward a solution, and creating this space for someone else to speak into, whether they're struggling with something or they're simply trying to find a solution to a business problem, is really powerful when we give people the space to do the thinking and the speaking into.
Yeah. But doesn't it, when you describe it like that, it sounds to me a little like the therapeutic environment where someone's job is to listen without judgment, no matter what you've got to share and say. Mm-hmm. Is that what we're asking sellers and leaders to do, is to create that kind of environment where they're not triggered, not reactive, and in a sense, emotionally big enough to hear whatever is going to be offered?
Yes. What we are asking is not for sellers to not be sellers. It's not for leaders to not be leaders. It's for humans to be humans. And it's for everyone to show up in a very generous and open manner that allows you to set your own stuff and your own baggage to the side and actually relate to another person in the moment. And that is extremely powerful. And it happens so infrequently, it boggles the mind. So when it does happen, it's a huge pattern interrupt. And people really feel into it. And they actually end up saying things. Often, if I'm doing empathic listening with someone and I'm just having a conversation, I'll hear things at the end like, oh my gosh, that was like a therapy session. Or, wow, I haven't been able to do the thinking the way that I have in years. In this 15 minutes, I've made more progress than when I've worked for a year with my therapist, things like that. And these are just normal, friendly, day-to-day conversations. This is not me actually trying to have a therapy or coaching session with someone. It's just creating the very generous space in which someone can do their thinking and speaking.
Okay. Bree, if it's so rare, it's either, in my view, a matter of a lack of awareness or a lack of skills, or it's just very difficult to do, like to put aside all of your own stuff. So what really gets in the way of humans being more human and listening empathically to each other?
I think that's a really great question. From my perspective, I know that it's very different to just have a skill than it is to show up in a very embodied, different way of being and then to practice that skill. So yes, you can have a skill. You can recreate what the other person says. You can ask a great follow-up question or clarification question to someone to dive deeper. You can make sure you're visually looking into the person's eyes or into the tiny green dot on your computer to signal that you're paying attention. You can make sure that your thoughts are in the right place. But if you're not showing up from the orientation of truly trying to create the space for someone else, you're still going to fall into those old traps of you're asking the clarification question, great, but you're waiting super fast to ask it. And then you're using it as a tool to make sure that you have time to take notes instead of really paying attention to what they're saying in response. Or another one that I'll find is that people can ask maybe 3 questions in a row and the person doesn't know how to answer or speak back into that question. Or finally, another thing that I often find is that we are not prepared to listen at all, let alone listen with true empathy. And that is because we're rushing all of the time and we're highly reactive, like you pointed to a second ago. And we don't have 5 minutes to use the restroom in between meetings, let alone time to recenter ourselves and check in to make sure that we are actually in the right state of mind or way of being to show up for that other person.
Okay. I noticed myself forming questions as I was listening, waiting for my chance to speak, and how hard it is to put that aside.
Yeah.
I wonder what's really upstream from that. You said getting ourselves prepared. So this seems like in order not to be in a rush and reactive. There is a considerable amount of time and effort to spend in preparation. What does that look like for you?
For me, that looks like, one, being very intentional. So I think there's a huge distinction between having an agenda and being intentional. Having an agenda is being really attached to the outcome of a situation. Like, I have to make this sale, the customer has to buy this from me, versus here's how I want to intentionally show up in my interactions with this customer. Here's how I want to be such that I build this relationship and, create a long-term, relationship with this customer, sell something longer. But the point is, this is how I'm going to be in this interaction and show up intentionally. And then I think the other thing is that we don't have enough practices, even if they're tiny and short, that help us throughout the day do a reset. So one of my favorite things to do is breath work, because it can instantly change your energy. Even if you only have 3 breaths worth of time, or if you have 30 seconds, or if you have 5 minutes, doing something like that and just inserting it in between meetings, for example, can allow you to check in. Okay, what's my intention for this meeting? How am I going to show up? And also, now, how do I actually reset what I've just come from? So I can set that to the side. My mind's not still swirling with the follow-up I have to do from the last meeting, but instead I just get to check in, make sure I'm feeling really grounded, and that I'm present, so that when I go into this meeting, I can actually be there for the other person.
Yeah. I have that experience. I spend much of each day thinking about the meetings that have happened, the one that I'm in right now, and the one that I've got this afternoon, and they all seem to occupy the same mind. And so it feels cluttered and difficult to listen to what's happening right now as a result.
Mm-hmm.
So that breath work is a way of just bringing yourself back to something very present, the in and out of your breath.
Yeah. I think here's a technique that's really easy for anyone. Navy SEALs use it. Everyone uses it. Slow down their autonomic nervous system, which is like the fight or flight response, right? You kind of just literally slow your body down. It's called box breathing. And you breathe, inhale for a count of 4, you hold it for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and then you hold at that exhale for a count of 4. And you just repeat that for a few rounds, and it makes you slow down your breath. Your mind pays attention to counting to 1 to 4. You can even visualize, or maybe even draw on your leg with your finger, the box or the square as you're doing it. So it gets you back into your body instead of just flying around. And like you said, either in the past or in the future, and you're not in the present moment, which is honestly where everything actually happens. It's where you live your life. It's where all possibilities are. It's when and where you make the relationships with people. So it's silly that we're in the past and the future when really we need to be in the present moment.
Yeah. I distinguish it as I'm so often present at things, but not present with them or present to them.
Right.
And I find that not just in meetings, but with my kids and my family. It's what a missed opportunity to miss the life that's happening right now for the one that's happened and the one that maybe will come. Usually doesn't, because the things I worry about in the future usually don't manifest anyway.
Yeah. So you're saying that your physical body is technically there, but you're really not present in that body during the interaction.
And I've used that as a defense when people notice that I'm not there, to say, but I'm here, I'm listening. Very different from really being present to. Okay.
Absolutely.
What's the best way that we can help other people to listen in this way when we notice, we may have prepared ourselves, done some box breathing, played up with an intention rather than an agenda, and everyone else in the meeting is just flying in there, flustered. How can we help?
One of the things I love is to kind of remind myself that I'm the thermostat, not the thermometer. So that does not, just because everyone else is flustering and running around, does not mean that you need to now change your energy to be running around and crazy to be productive in that meeting, which is what we often do. We allow our energy to change based on the energy around other people. But what if you flipped it? If those other people can impact your energy in that way such that you change, can't it go the other way? Can't you do it in the other direction? Can't you be the thermostat where you're set at a cool 70 and you show up and your energy actually impacts the meeting the other way around. So if you notice that other people are distracted, or you notice that they're rushing around, or they're not asking the right questions, or you're getting off topic from what the real intention of the meeting is, slow down. Actually be silent. Ask a really good question. Honestly, check in with the other person. I think that we are oftentimes afraid to do the really simple things because they feel like they might be challenging or hard, that make all the difference. Like, if you notice someone is distracted, actually ask them, but don't ask them in a way that's like, you're not paying attention to me. I can't believe that you're wasting my time. Check in with them in a really human way, in an empathetic way, to actually say, hey, what's going on? I noticed that you feel a little distracted here. Do you still want to have this meeting now? Are we still ready for this conversation? And I think little things like that, where you hold the energy because you are intentional with how you want to show up, makes a huge difference. And I have noticed personally, I have people telling me their favorite meetings are the meetings with me because of the energy I bring to them. So simply by just changing your energy, I'm not doing anything spectacular to prepare for the meeting, a special agenda. I'm not saying all the right amazing things during the meeting. I'm not winning something, but just my energy alone has a huge impact on how other people want to show up, want to engage, and, really collaborate with each other. So be the thermostat, not the thermometer.
Okay. I love that line, be the thermostat, not the thermometer. It reminds me of the opening lines of Rudyard Kipling's If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you.
Yeah.
Okay, Brie, I know we're almost at time. I would love to get your last thoughts on empathic listening. Like, what's available for the world if we all learn this skill, or any big insights you'd like to share, and where maybe other people could find some resources for further thinking and reading.
What's available for all of us is that we are seen and understood, and that we not only get something out of being generous for others, but hopefully by kind of spreading and being and holding that energy, other people start to in turn do that for us. So that's definitely not like the end goal in mind, right? It's not like I'm doing this so someone else will do it for me. However, the more you create this energy, the more that you can actually generate it and receive it for yourself as well. So there is
the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. Be the change. There you go. That sums it up. I mean, it's always that quote. It just never fails, that quote. Okay. And then I know that we have a really great resource on our website, habitsatwork.com. If you go, we collaborated with Gong, and they have some great research that shows sellers do really well when they actually listen instead of talk more with customers. So there's some really juicy tidbits and a little resource for you to download there. And then I've personally written, I think, at least one article on my LinkedIn profile around empathic listening. And it's a pretty funny story about my parents decorating my bedroom without my permission when I was younger. So if you feel so inclined, check that out or follow me. I'd love to connect with you and discuss this topic further.
Yeah. Well, if you are joining us live or you're seeing the recording of this, please do connect with Brian on LinkedIn. You'll find her comments in the chat, or her profile in the comments rather. I encourage you to follow her because she's got some really amazing content. And Bree, thank you for joining us. And personally, thank you for always being that big space holder for me whenever I need someone that really listens to me.
My pleasure. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you for joining us. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.